Hey, my name's Spibsboft, and this is Grab. And the coolest thing about Grab, probably, is the most well-known thing about it, which is that you could play a variety of levels. But obviously, to have this many levels, people have to create them. Um, so, I'm going to be giving you a full, extensive guide on the basics and fundamentals of building a level in Grab. So, to start, we gotta know how to get into Editor. And for this, you need to be hosting the lobby yourself. And you have to press Open Editor right here in this menu that should show up in front of the lobby. You press Open Editor, and you'll see what happens. So this is what everybody spawns in Editor. It's a basic stone block in a rectangular format with the beginning and the end over here. These are pretty important, but we will discuss them later. So to start learning how to build, let's learn how to build. So to get into build mode, you want to press Y on your controller, which is the top button on your left controller. So you press it and you get into build mode. Now, if you show yourself any one of your controllers to face you, this pop-up menu will show up. To scroll through this pop-up menu, you simply have to put your cursor below a block and then just drag, and you'll see all the options for blocks you have. So if we look just at the basic squares, we have a colored block, we have a breaking block, though this one doesn't break, we have a lava grapple, a grapple, a wood block, a lava block, an ice block, a breaking block, pretty sure that's the one that breaks, and a stone block. Now, if you look over here on the top of your menu, you'll see position snap and rotation snap. Now, you can adjust this to whatever feels comfortable to you, but for me, I use position snap 0 and rotation snap 5. That's the most comfortable for me. So, let's give a rundown of the blocks. And oh yeah, you put your cursor on the block to see these over here. So this square, once you hold it with your trigger, you can pull it in and out to make it longer or shorter. With these arrows, if you hold it, you can move the entire block, like on a grid without having to sort of displace it. So you can very easily just move this, and this red block will rotate it. These appear on multiple sides for different types of rotations, to move it in different directions, and to increase its size in different directions as well. Also, if you put both your cursors and grab with both of them, if you push in or out, you will make the block bigger or smaller. Also, moving in editor mode is the same as moving as a regular person. You just grab with your side trigger, and you just pull to whatever way you want to go. If you want to get bigger, you grab with both side triggers and push in. If you want to get smaller, you push out. And you do that until you're at a size that's comfortable for your build. So, this is the color block. This is probably going to be the most important block for building any level, absolutely any level. If you select this, and then you look at your menu, and you press selection, you will see an entire color menu. If you hover your cursor over this and click it with your trigger, you will change the color of this block to whatever you want. You can also, on your selection menu, lock the block so that you don't accidentally move it, and this is useful for grouping things, which I will explain later on. Let's look at another block. Here is a stone block, possibly the most useless block in Grab. It does absolutely nothing. You can't grab it, you can't slide on it, you can't bounce on it, you can't grapple it. It's just kind of there. Although these are similar, but this one has a pretty basic texture. I recommend you don't use this one unless you want your level or some part of your level to be themed around these blocks. Then we got the breaking block, though this one doesn't break. This is just a yellow stone block, I guess. This one you can grab onto, you cannot grapple onto it. And every block but this is uncolorable. The only thing you can do with other blocks is lock it and group it with others. I'll explain grouping in a second. This is an ice block. You can use this to slide, and that's pretty much it for that one. The lava block kills you. Pretty simple. The wood block is also pretty important. This one will be pretty fundamental. This one is only used for grabbing, but as I will show you soon, you can actually use these blocks inside of others to mask them, that's not fully masked, and still make something grabbable, which I will explain in further detail. This is an actual breaking block. If you press on your selection menu while selecting this, you can have a stable time, which is how long it takes for it to crack when you're on it or grabbing it. And then you can also edit the respawn time, which is how long it takes to respawn from when it was first broken. Generally, I just do a simple 2-2, but if you want a longer stable time or a longer respawn time for certain reasons, you can edit it. It goes up pretty high, and it goes low pretty low. This is a grapple block. This is both grabbable and grappleable. So this block will also be pretty fundamental, and this one is almost equally as fundamental. This cannot be grabbed, and this kills you if you come in contact with it. So you can grapple this, just like that block, but you cannot grab it, and it kills you. Now let's explain some other blocks over here. We have the sign. This sign does not have anything in the selection menu other than the lock, but if you see this little notepad with a pencil up here, and you click it, you'll have this drop-down menu with a keyboard. You can press twice to full caps, which has just been added. This is one of the most recent updates, and you can write whatever you want in here. I'll just write a basic message. Now, signs are very useful if you want to lead players in a certain direction or tell them a certain story in your maps, so this one will be useful. But these signs take up a lot of complexity, and let's talk about that. So I am a verified creator, which means that the creator of this game, Slin, he thinks that I'm good enough at building to give me a higher complexity limit. Currently, regular players only get a 1,500 complexity limit, but since I'm verified, I get double that at 3,000. The reason I bring up complexity is because different blocks give you different complexity. Signs take up 5 complexity. Regular blocks just take up 2. I'm pretty sure some take more than others, but most of them are only 2. So you can see that the complexity goes up and down when I create or delete something. So yeah, you want to be very wary of that, because once your complexity reaches max, or just 2 away from the max, then you cannot build any longer. So you want to make sure that you are using your complexity wisely, or else you'll have an unfinished level and might have to scrap it and restart it entirely. So that's a sign. We're going to leave this here because we're going to use it for something else. This right here is a start pad. I don't know what the exact name is. To minimize or maximize this size, you simply grab over here and move it up or down. This will make it bigger or smaller. And again, the arrows can be used to move it, and the red circle can be used to rotate it. This arrow is pointing towards where the player will look at as soon as they spawn into your map. So you wouldn't want to have the sign over here and then have the arrow look the opposite direction, because then you'll spawn looking that way and they won't immediately see the sign. So you want to make sure that it's facing whatever you want your player to be seeing as soon as they open the level. This is very important. Also, depending on how big this will basically create the maximum area that a player can spawn in. So this doesn't mean they will spawn in the exact middle. A player can spawn over here, or over here, or even at the very edge, which is not very good because they'd fall off. So you want to make sure you're also being a little bit wary of that, so you know how to use it wisely. And this is the end block. Both of them can be grabbed from over here, but since there can only be one per level, as soon as you grab one, the other one disappears. So I'm just gonna put this right here. This is an end block. This will be the end of your level. As soon as a player reaches this, on the menu, although you don't see it now because I'm not actually playing a level, I'm just editing, it will tell them the time it took for them to finish it and show a little finish flag. As soon as all players finish a level, the level is immediately skipped. So that block is pretty important because that is where your level ends, and if you don't have that, you can't verify your level, and I'll explain verifying in a minute. Now let's talk about the other buttons on your controller. So first we have that little trash can button, which is, sorry, I had to look, B. on your right controller. If you grab onto something, and while you're grabbing onto it, if you press B, the trash can button, it'll instantly delete it. If you also select multiple things, which I will explain in a moment, and you grab it and delete it, it'll delete all of them. Now, what if you accidentally just happen to have deleted it by accident? Well, this is what you can do. On your left controller, there's this toggle. If you push it to the left and then press down on it, it'll undo what you just did. Now let's say, actually, no, I want that deleted. So instead of just going through the whole deletion process again, you push it to the right and press down, and that will be redo. And just so you remember, this button right here had to look, which is Y, on your left controller, can send you back into player mode or back into editor mode. This is another important button. This is A. I keep having to look, I'm sorry. On your controller. This is for if you want to duplicate something. So you will hold onto it, you will press that button, and you will move this to wherever you want to duplicate it to. So you can just keep doing that. Oh no, I don't want this to be duplicated, so I'll just delete that. And here's a fun little tip. If you are holding on to this button, the red circle, you can also press the duplicate button to instantly create something like this. Or, as seen in some grab maps, you can create a planet-looking thing, which is very interesting. You add, like, a certain color, and then you use this, you press duplicate, and then you change the color to whatever you want. And if you do it a couple times, and change the color a little, it'll look sort of planety. I'm not very good at this. A lot of people are better at this than me, but yeah. Oh, and if you grab onto the arrows and hold it and press duplicate, it'll duplicate it as well. Duplication and holding the arrows and those are very useful. Now let's talk about the next tab that I haven't yet explained. This tab is called Ambiance. So if you don't even need to click on these tabs, by the way, you just put your cursor to it. You'll have this long menu, and it looks very complicated, but trust me, it's not. Sky color determines the color of the sky, but not the horizon, that little line you see there. So I'm going to bring the saturation up so you can see what the color looks like. And here, I can scroll through and change the hue. So let's say I want a sunset-y color. So I'll do that. I can change the brightness, I can change the saturation. Now here's the horizon color. I will also bring up the saturation so you can see the color pretty well. See, that only changes the horizon, what's surrounding you in that sort of midsection. If I change the hue to a sort of... Let me find a good... Yeah, that's sort of sunset-y. I mean, I'm not very good at this, don't get me wrong, so... I'll bring the saturation a little bit down. Then we got the sun. That is that, right there. The sun, big and bright. If you change the altitude, well, it changes the altitude. So a good sunset would be from about that altitude. So you can see this changed shadows entirely. If I just look at this and change the altitude, you see how much the shadows change on everything. So you should try to play around with the sun until you find a good shadowing for your entire level. Azimuth is just like the horizontal scale to see where it goes horizontally. And size is how big it is. If you just completely minimize it, there's no sun. But you can make it really big for much brightness. So that's pretty good. If you want a more ominous tone level, you can change your fog. So you can make it very foggy, so it looks sort of like a sandstorm. And like, if I were to stretch out this over here, and put a little spawn over here, then you'd have to walk to see the sign that says hello player. This is super cool, but for now, I'm gonna turn the fog down because I want to be able to explain the rest of this build. I'm also gonna turn the sun down because I don't want it in my eyes. Okay, now let's talk about grouping and selecting things. So let's say you're making, I'm just gonna make a quick little thingy. Okay, so let's just say that's a mushroom. I'm gonna give this a different coloration. Give it some of that. Okay, so that's a mushroom. Let's say I'm making like a fantasy map and I want a lot of mushrooms. So I don't want to just have to keep duplicating each individual one, or even worse, building each individual one so it's all uneven. So what I could do is I could hover over with one cursor, and then hover over the other one with another cursor, and then I press down with my top trigger at the same time. This will instantly select both of them. Now, generally, you don't want to do this, because this could, as you can see, sometimes, like, mess things up. Obviously, you can undo, but it's still a hassle. So, there's two things you can do here. This is the one I do a lot. I go to my selection menu, I press lock, so now I can't physically move this. Then I put my cursor in it, and I select the other one. Now, none of that is moving, and it's perfect, so I could just duplicate this around my level as I wish. Now, this is the other way to instantly group things. So, with your left or right controller, though I'll recommend right because left has the whole undo and redo thing and you don't want to accidentally press those. So with your right controller, you're going to press down on your top trigger, and you'll see that a little ball lights up over there. If you move to the right with your toggle, this ball will increase in size. It stops over here, it doesn't increase over that, and you can minimize it in size. This is useful because then you can just drag this across, as so. So you won't have to actually touch it and mess it up. And also, if you're bigger, then the ball is obviously bigger, so you could select an entire map and move it if you think it's not at the right position. Let's say you've just duplicated a bunch of these, but you say, oh, that isn't enough, but now I can't select them again. Oh god, I'm gonna have to go through the entire selection process again. Well, there's a quick fix to that. For more complex objects that you're gonna need to select and move a lot, you don't want to have to keep selecting each individual piece. Alright, so really quickly before I continue, I did end up losing the clip, so I'm gonna have to restart this other half of the video. Pretty stressful, I'm sorry, ran into some editing problems, as they say, technical difficulties, but let's continue on with the tutorial. So where I left off was that basically you had a really long and complex object, obviously not like this, something better than this, and you don't want to have to copy this entire thing, go through that entire selection process again to be able to duplicate it around your map. So there's a pretty easy fix for this problem so you don't have it anymore in the future. So you will first start by selecting all of it for one of the objects, then you will go to your selection menu, and there's this beautiful button over here called Group. Once you press Group, the color menu will disappear, and I'll explain the color menu in a second. And now, every time you try to move a block, it just moves the entire thing because they're grouped together. And sure, that happens with the other one, but the only difference of an object being ungrouped is that if I click away from this, it is still grouped when I click back. But if I ungroup it, and I click away from it, now it's just one, or not one, many separate objects. Now what is this color wheel? Not color wheel, but color menu. Why is it here if these are different colors? Well, if the object is not grouped and is simply fully selected, you can change the color of the entire thing to, say, blue, whatever color you want. So now you just have this, this blue blob. Yeah, you have this blue blob. Hip 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 hooray. But obviously you can, actually undoing colors doesn't work sometimes for some reason. So apparently you can't. But I can reselect these and change it back to its original form. So if you do remember from a little bit far back, I had this sign that said hello player. Very basic sign, very simple message. Now you might have seen this before in some maps where there is no sign, but there still is text. So how do you make it so that there's just text but no sign? Well, it's pretty simple actually. So you're going to first start by putting a block near the edge of this sign and then masking it. So for this case, let's just pretend I'm making a sci-fi level. So I want a sci-fi looking sign. I don't want an actual sign, I want rather a computer screen per se. I'm going to make that computer screen, add the border of the computer over here. Now of course, remember this is just an example, which means you don't need to make it a computer screen, but if you don't want a sign, that's just a plain old wooden sign, you don't need one. And so you can reach in here to find the sign. It's generally pretty easy to know when it's a sign because the sign does not have this blue block, unlike every other block in the game does. So you will find the sign, which I'm struggling with, I'm sorry, and you will hold on to the green arrow. Now you'll move this until only the text shows up. Alright, pretty simple. Now, you may struggle with this a little bit, so my tip is to just be spamming and unspamming this little green arrow to the direction that it needs to go. So if I accidentally overshoot, then I'll push it back this way until the text is here, and I could stop. So here we have a pretty cool looking sign. Oops, that is out there. So we have a pretty cool looking sign that's a screen now. It's not just a regular sign. And although you don't have to do this for your levels, it's much better if you're not going for the type of vibe that a regular wooden sign would give. So like Western or old, anything opposite of modern. But if you want anything other than that, or maybe you want to hide some messages in your wall, you can just put the sign in it. And I'm going to show you by making this quick wall. It's not going to be very well hidden, so I'm going to make it, let's just say green. Green works. I'm going to type a message here, hello, and I'm going to hide it somewhere, so I'm going to hide it right here. So maybe this sign could be a clue to beat your level, and it could just be a little hidden over here. A lot of players in Grab generally ignore signs, but they are still very useful indeed. So I'm going to delete this because I don't need it anymore, but I am going to keep this for the later half of the video. Now, since we just spoke about signs being inside of other blocks, let's talk about adding regular blocks inside of regular blocks. So for this case, I'm going to be using wood and then a regular block. A lot of times, you really never want to use wood, grapples, lava grapples, this block, or the stone block just out in the open. In fact, you basically don't want to use a stone block at all unless, like I said, fits the theme of your level. So, to put a wood block inside of another block, you're going to put the block near the edge of the wood block, and then try to kind of mask it around nearly perfectly. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be perfectly masked around it, because your hand is pretty big, so as soon as I grab on just at this edge, as you can see, it'll still grab onto the block that's inside of it, because, well, it's a circle, and it's big, so it's actually going inside of the block. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see that the wood block is just a little layer in there. Now, the wood block isn't the only block that you can actually add into a different block. You can also use a grapple block, which is pretty nice. Now, this one you want to try to get it a little bit more perfectly masked, but again, not perfectly masked. So you put this around here, bring it around town, try to hide it, and now we've got a fully functioning grapple. Since this one is grabbable, well, it's grabbable. And that's the thing. What if you don't want your players to grab the grapple block? You just want them to be swinging around and not cheat by grabbing on it and then jumping to the next one, which is a pretty common cheating method. So, the best solution to this is to use a lava grapple block instead of a regular grapple block, because as I explained in the beginning of the video, these blocks are not grabbable. Let me mask this around a little better. Now, the good thing about this is that since it functions sort of like a lava block, it cannot kill you while it is inside another block. You need to make direct contact with it, or else it simply will not work. But, oh, now I'm stuck under the map. If I try to grab onto this, you'll see that I physically cannot, even if I shove my hand all the way in there. It just doesn't work. So this tip is pretty useful if you want to make a harder level. Another block that just doesn't work, in this case, inside of a regular block, is a bouncy block. You need to come into direct contact with the bouncy block to actually bounce. This is the same thing for lava, as I explained. I can put lava all around this. It's not perfectly masked, but it's fine. And it won't kill me unless, of course, I go to this edge, which it isn't masked. But you get the gist of it. And another cool little thing is that you can add blocks inside of stuff like lava as well. So you can make the lava grabbable, which I've actually done in one of my maps. So your player needs to be more careful to not hit the block, as I just did. So yeah, these are pretty useful tips for adding blocks inside of other blocks. Just mask them around pretty nice, and you'll have a roll. Now, before I end off this section of adding blocks inside of blocks, there are some blocks which are really hard to add inside of others, such as the cylinder block, which I almost never get it right. I try to center it perfectly, but if you see, even if I think it's perfect, it just doesn't work sometimes, and I think this is, nope, yep, not perfect. So, the best way, if you're really struggling with adding a block inside of another block, to go about it is to turn your rotation snap up to 90. This makes it completely rigid, as I think I've explained before, so you can only move it 90 degrees. So all blocks will move in about the same direction, so you could easily place it in there, and then just put it wherever you want. You can bring this, bring this like so, and now you've got a grabbable cylinder. Now let's say you don't want it to be perfectly rigid, you want it to be like a tilted, like fallen tree type of thing. So you just grab that, turn your rotation snap, like I mentioned. Well, I didn't mention it, but I showed it. And now you've got a grabbable cylinder. And I'm pretty sure it goes the same for the triangle and pyramid blocks, though those are a lot harder to do absolutely anything with. I rarely use those. So another good utilization for the rotation snap 90 is making text, because a lot of times this is not big enough, and although there is a sign glitch for that, it's a little bit complicated, so I'll explain it possibly in another video, possibly not as well. So, when making text with blocks, you want to use rotation snap 90, always, and you always want to use just one block to keep copying around. So I'm going to use this block, I'm going to make it about this high, and I'm going to write a very basic word. I'm going to write the, and you want to match it to every single angle of the block you started with. This includes the top angle. You want to make sure it's at the right height so that the different letters aren't in the wrong height. So I'm going to bring this down. Of course, you could change the size a little bit, but remember to try to copy the starting block a lot of the times. So like I said, I'm writing a simple word. You can see that I got this bottom and this top part pretty well aligned, but the side view, it doesn't look that good. So instead of going and moving all of them, I'm going to use a tip that I taught you from before to select all of these and simply move them right in place. Like so. That's in place. The back view sometimes might look a little bit doo-doo, but that's fine because generally you'll only see the front view. But if you want them to see the back view, then so be it. Now, you've already got pretty good letters here, but I'm going to add some effects, and by effects, I mean shadows, specifically. So what you do to make shadowing is you select all of these, you will group them just to be safe, and then you will move them a little bit down, a little bit to the side, and a little bit down. Now the reason you have to move it all like this is because of a certain thing that I will show you right now. So let's say I'm moving two blocks really close to each other, a white block and a black block. So right now it looks pretty fine, but as soon as I click off of it, you can see that it starts to glitch. I move it in one direction like this direction that I didn't move starts to glitch because they're on the same exact axis. So you gotta move all of the sides. So be pretty sure you do that, or else it'll look a little weird. So to make this an actual shadow, I'm going to ungroup it so that the color menu will pop up, and I'm going to turn them all black. And now you've got a pretty darn good shadowing. Now in this tutorial, I've taught you a lot of things. I'm not even going to try to go back and teach you everything I've taught, but I'm going to go ahead and delete the things I don't want to use, and I am going to quickly construct an obby using some of the things that I have taught you. So first, we're going to remove this ground because, like I said, you preferably don't want to have stone in your map. I'm going to create a new ground. Now, I don't like the ambiance. It's not really giving off the vibe that I want. And so, I'm simply going to change that hue. Move it down like so. Change the saturation. Now it's pretty normal, to be honest. Let me just toggle with this hue a little bit. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. So I wanted to change the sun's position because you can see how dark everything looks and how scary it looks. So if I move it up, then it's really bright and happy, like what I'm trying to go for. And since this is a fantasy map, you don't really want to have screens here, but then again, I don't want to use signs. So what should I use? I'm just gonna make this plain old brown, and you'll see what I'll do with it in a second. So let's create a mushroom like I did last time. This time I'm gonna make it a little bit better looking by using a cylinder, which is what mushrooms look like more. I'll use another cylinder up here. And now I'm actually going to put a ball over this to make a sort of semi-sphere, which looks really nice if you do it well. Which I didn't do it too well, but you know what? It's decent. It's decent looking. I'm gonna go ahead and put some spots on this. I'm gonna have to turn down my rotation snap for this. I don't know why I left it at 5 the entire time. So I'm gonna go ahead, copy some of this. This is a really bad mushroom, by the way. Just ignore it. This is a little test map to show you guys how to build. Alright, pretty decent. Gonna select all of this with the tool that I showed you. I'm gonna group it so I won't have to worry about forgetting or clicking off of it like I literally just did by accident. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this around. So I've got a couple mushrooms here, but this is looking kind of plain. So here's a little tip from me to you on how to make pretty darn good but very simple looking blades of grass. So I'm gonna create a tiny little square. I'm gonna match the color, or lighter. I think I'm gonna go with lighter. It could be whatever you want. Then I'm gonna create these squares, I'm gonna duplicate them, make them slightly different sizes, and put them in sort of this orientation, so that it's kind of like a little L when you look at it in a certain direction. This is pretty good, so I'm gonna group this, because luckily now grouping doesn't take complexity anymore. It used to. Kind of a bummer that it did, but you won't have to worry about that no more. So I'm gonna add some grass. Give me a minute to do that. So I just did a lot on this side. I made a lot of grass, right? But I didn't exactly make a lot on that side. So instead of going and duplicating everything all over again, I'm going to simply select all of these blades of grass. I accidentally selected the end, so just ignore that. And I'm going to duplicate it. And obviously it doesn't duplicate the end, it just takes the end with it. And I'm going to actually rotate it in this way so it doesn't look the exact same. I believe it won't look the exact same if I do that. Now, this is already looking pretty neat, except for maybe this part. So, I'm going to put the start somewhere that won't interfere with that block, so there's no trouble. Sure. Now I'm going to make a quick little tree, very simple one. I'm going to change the sign over here so I can tell the player what to do. I'm going to put climb the course. And now, let's make that course. So I'm going to make it so that you're going to climb on little rocks. And obviously, you can't climb on stone, which I guess would represent rocks, or just gray blocks. So I'm going to use a technique that I taught you not too long ago, with putting blocks inside of blocks. So I'm going to grab this wood block, place it in there, place it in there, and voila. Now I can simply select these, both of them, and group it so that I can move it around my course. Now that I've finished the course, I'm going to put the end up here or else I cannot verify the level, and I will explain verification as soon as I'm done with this. I'm pretty sure that this already looks pretty nice. Obviously, it's a very simple map, not at all a hard one, but this is pretty useful. You should make smaller maps like this so you can get ready to actually make much bigger and better maps in the future. So as you can see, I've already finished this all at once, but I'm going to verify it now so that I can publish it. If you want to publish a level, this is what you do. If you want to publish a level, then I will teach you how to go through that entire process right now. So you'll first open up your menu, which is with this button right here. That's like the menu for almost every game. you just click it, and 2 tabs show up. Ignore this one for now. Well, actually, forever. This doesn't really matter. You will look over here, and you will press publish. So this gives you a little warning about not putting inappropriate content and some other things. So just press continue on that. It's going to ask you to verify it, so I'm going to press verify. But you have to save your level first. So I'm going to save the level, and right here I put a title. So I'm just going to put a very simple title, Fantasy Course. That works. Then you have to put creators, which is your name. So I'm going to put Spibsboft. That's my username. Don't put your real name, obviously. Then if there's multiple creators, which you've got to remember this, you have to put a comma and then a space. So let's just say Spibsboft friend. I wish I had friends. Okay, that's besides the point. Then here's a description. This isn't necessary, but you should still put one, even if it's a very simple one. So I'm just gonna put the title, because I'm not good with descriptions. Fantasy course, Fatancy course. That's not spelled right, but whatever. And down here, this is pretty important. This says checkpoints 10. That's the default checkpoints. You should always change this depending on how many checkpoints you want to give your players. The max is absolute 0, so you can give your players no checkpoints at all. And that's the minimum, actually. Sorry, I slipped up a little. But the maximum is 100. So this is very easy, so I'm just going to put 0. They don't need any checkpoints, and there's barely anywhere for them to place it anyways. So I'm going to press save, and it's going to ask me to verify it. So I'm going to press verify, and I should be verifying. Whoa, wait, was that facing the right way? Yeah, it was. I guess it just a little, but that's okay. So this can get a little repetitive sometimes. Just do that. Hello player, climb the course. So I'm going to follow the directions and climb the course. To verify your level, you have to actually complete it. Verification in this game has 2 different definitions, but the first, which is what you just saw, is verifying to make sure that your level is playable. Because if it's not playable, then why would you publish it? Nobody would ever be able to beat your level. So as soon as you walk into the end, it'll say verified. Your level can now be published, so you can press publish. And then it gives you another warning. Just press continue if you've read the warning. And success. Okay. Now, it doesn't automatically show up over here, but it will sooner or later. And if you notice, some of my levels have OK on the sides, which means they are verified. This is the other type of verified. It's pretty complicated, to be completely fair, but this verified means that either the creator of the game or moderators on the game thought that the levels were nice enough to be put as verified, which means they show up on the verified page when you're in a lobby. Now, you may be asking, I have made really good levels, or at least I think they are really good levels, but they have never gotten verified. Why? Well, the main reason is that don't expect moderators or the creator of the game to look at the community levels tab, which is what your level automatically shows up on, and say, wow, this is great, I'm going to verify this. No, in fact, moderators and the creator of the game, Slin, they barely ever look at the community levels tab. So, what you do want to do to get your level on the verified page, is to join the Discord, first of all. The Discord link will be on the screen, or a much easier way is to simply join the Discord through the website, which I believe is grabvr.quest. If I'm wrong, I'll put the correction up on screen, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. And over there, it'll give you a direct link to the Discord. In the Discord, and in that website I just mentioned, you can search up your levels and copy the link of those levels to post them in a certain channel in the Discord called Grab Level Showcase. Here is where the creator of the game and moderators of the game look at a lot. They will look at these levels on the viewer that's available on the website, which is actually a pretty cool feature. If they think your level looks good enough, once you put it in Grab Level Showcase, if like everything's aligned and everything's leveled, and it's just a good map overall, then they will verify it, which means it will have an OK. Now, please remember, this doesn't automatically make you a verified creator. You could have hundreds of verified maps, but still not be a verified creator. To become a verified creator, there isn't really a process. You can't really ask to become a verified creator. But if the creator of the game, and I'm pretty sure the moderators have this ability too, if they think you've made enough good maps, or you are just good at building overall, they will make you a verified creator, which will mean, like I showed you, instead of having a complexity limit of 1,500, you will have a complexity limit of 3,000, like I showed you. And just to show you, if you press open over here, you'll see all the levels you've worked on. So I'm gonna open up a random level. Let's see. I think episode 7 is a pretty good one to start on. So this level was made by me and a couple friends. This just shows what you can do once you've learned the basics and some of the advancednesses. So it's pretty complicated things over here and there, but this just looks really awesome, and that's probably why it was verified. Also, this does have parkour, and like I showed you, this was actually a wood block that was placed inside of it. And even Tim over here, that's his name, he has a wood block in his face. We also placed wood blocks inside of, let me show you right here, these balls, so that you could easily just grab around and parkour around. And we also put them in those, and etc., etc. And as you can see, we worked really hard on this. It took us like 2 hours to finish this entire level. But this just goes to show that if you really practice building and try to get better at it, such as, watching this video, you can create really awesome levels. I have waited a little, and Fantasy Course has published, so you can see it right here, and people will be able to play it on the community tab. And I can also post this on the Discord to get it verified, but it probably won't because it's such a small, simple, kind of stupid level. Though it is relatively well made compared to like 90% of the community tab levels. So that about concludes it for all of the basics that you need to know for building and grab. So I hope you all have a great day or night, and I may or may not see you again with another tutorial or something of the sort. Have a good one.